The controversy over grammar schools in England. The Prime Minister confirms she wants them to expand. Theresa May said all schools in England should be able to select pupils by ability, so long as they help poorer pupils get on.
In a country that works for everyone, it doesn't matter where you were born or how much your parents earn. If you work hard and do the right thing, you will be able to go as far as you can.
We'll be looking at the tensions at Westminster around Mrs May's announcement and at how the grammar school system in Northern Ireland performs. Also this lunchtime, condemnation of North Korea as it carries out yet another nuclear test explosion. Story rewrites the record books. She's become the most successful British female Paralympian in history, surpassing her hero.
Incredible. I mean, it's taken me 2 sports. Tanni managed it in 1, so she's an incredibly special lady and first person I spoke to when I came off the track.
Benefits of statins have been underestimated and the harm exaggerated, says a new report. And just hanging around, dozens of people are trapped thousands of feet up after their cable cars break down.
In the south, some GP surgeries in Dorset could close to make way for bigger medical centres. And restored to its former glory, the stately home severely damaged by a fire reopens to the public.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the BBC News at 1. Theresa May has set out her plans for changing the school system in England, including the controversial expansion of grammar schools, where pupils are selected at 11 on the basis of their academic ability. Mrs May said £50 million will go towards allowing grammars to grow and that new selective schools could be opened where parents want them, overturning a 2-decade ban in England on new grammars. All English schools will be given the right to apply to select pupils by ability. The Prime Minister said fears that children would face a cliff edge at the age of 11 were unfounded and that children should be able to move to a grammar at a later stage if they did well. Here's our political correspondent, Ben Wright.
A stride forward, not a leap backwards. That's how Theresa May pitched her plans for a new generation of grammar schools. A radical, controversial step.
We know that grammar schools are hugely popular with parents. We know they are good for the pupils that attend them. Indeed, the attainment gap between rich and poor pupils is reduced to almost zero for children in selective schools. And we know that they want to expand.
Since 1998, the building of new grammar schools in England has been banned. But Mrs May argues selecting by academic ability will help disadvantaged children get on.
We're going to ask new grammars to demonstrate that they will attract pupils from different backgrounds. For example, as I said, by taking a proportion of children from lower income households. And existing grammars will be expected to do more too, by working with local primary schools to help children from more disadvantaged backgrounds to apply. This is not a proposal to go back to a binary model of grammars and secondary moderns, but to build on our increasingly diverse school system.
Theresa May arrived in number 10, promising to improve the lives of working class people. And here are the first policies. By embracing grammar schools, Mrs May has made a radical break with the approach of her predecessor as Tory leader.
And I want to say absolutely clearly that the Conservative Party I am leading does not want to go back to the 11 plus. It does not want to go back to the grammar school system.
England's remaining grammar schools undoubtedly get the results, but critics say at a big cost to children who don't pass the test to get in. And today, England's Chief Inspector of Schools said new grammars were simply not needed.
The comprehensive system is working. The academy movement, the free school movement, greater autonomy for schools, better governance is working, and it needs time to bed in. And my fear is that this will throw a spanner in the works and slow that momentum down.
And when the government's education plans firm up and go to Parliament to discuss, the political fight will be fierce.
If you are choosing to become a grammar, you are therefore selecting the top 15–20% of pupils coming into your school. So what happens to the rest of those pupils? Every school can't be a grammar by definition. For every grammar you open, you create 3 or 4 secondary moderns.
Theresa May's speech was important, not just because it reopened the issue of grammar schools, but because it sketched out a radical overhaul of education. More faith schools are promised. She said private schools had to do more for all children. This was a new Prime Minister keen to put her stamp on the country. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, one part of the UK that does have a grammar school system is Northern Ireland, where almost half the children are educated in selective schools. Our Ireland correspondent Chris Page reports.
Northern Ireland had a state-run 11+ exam until 8 years ago, but after it was scrapped, grammar schools set up their own entry tests. They're a big part of the academic landscape here. There are 67 grammar schools in Northern Ireland. They have about 63,000 pupils. That's 45% of all children in post-primary education. The Stormont Education Minister says the system is a success.
Certainly I think it's something that's worked well in Northern Ireland. Our academic results, both at A-level, GCSE, have consistently been ahead of the rest of the United Kingdom. This year, for instance, we had 83% pass rate compared to 77% at A-level. Overall, I think there's greater life chances for those when decisions are being made on the basis of their ability rather than simply how wealthy their parents are.
Grammar schools like this one in Belfast have many strong supporters in Northern Ireland. They say that the system drives up exam results and improves social mobility. But there are also plenty of parents, politicians and teachers who strongly believe that testing 11-year-olds is not fair. The principal of this school in Londonderry thinks selection at that age is wrong.
We can no longer consign 80,000 of our young people to an education system that has branded them as not good enough. Do we want to tell a young person at 11 that they are a winner or a loser?
What rules do we have? So 5-3, we used to say...
At this non-selective school in North Belfast, 80% of pupils go on to university.
What we have managed to show is that in a non-selective environment, even with high levels of social deprivation, we're able to produce achievement at both GCSE and A-level, which would stand up against any school across the country.
This autumn, several thousand 10 and 11-year-olds will sit grammar school entry tests. Outside a primary school in Belfast this morning, opinion on academic selection was divided.
Well, I do think that it's a good thing there are grammar schools, that there is academic selection in a way, but it does put children under pressure.
Yeah, it's a little tough, to be honest, on the kids, I think, and it seems a little bit unfair.
The old system, I thought the old system worked fairly well,
Whenever there was a state-run 11+ exam?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The different sides in the debate here disagree on whether grammar schools open up more opportunities to more people. That's one of the most controversial issues in Northern Ireland. Chris Page, BBC News, Belfast.
Well, our education correspondent Gillian Hargreaves is with me. And Gillian, grammars, as we've seen, have been a big part of the school system in Northern Ireland for years. But Theresa May seems to be proposing a more mixed economy in England.
Yes, while it was the strongest endorsement of grammar schools I've seen from a senior politician in, 25, 30 years, she did say that social mobility lies at the heart of this. She talked a lot about creating a meritocracy in the UK, of helping working class families, bright children who want to get on. So she was saying she's not harking back to the old days of grammar schools and secondary moderns. She wants this new generation of grammar schools to sort of lie in the heart of a pluralistic approach. So lots of different kinds of schools to help parents find the best fit for their child. So while there's £50 million being set aside to help existing grammar schools expand, they've got to do more to encourage more the less well-off children to apply, and they've also got to assist schools around them to improve. So that's one measure she's going to introduce. She said if a comprehensive school or an academy wants to become a grammar school, they'll only be able to do so if local parents want that to happen. And she said that she wants a better role for universities, that she wants more universities to come forward and sponsor schools. And she hoped that this sort of mixed bag of reforms will do its bit to raise standards for the 1.5 million children in England's schools who are still in schools that require improvement.
Gillian, many thanks. North Korea says it's carried out a 5th successful nuclear test. The explosion caused a magnitude 5 earthquake, and South Korea believes it's the North's biggest ever test. It raises fears that the state has made real nuclear advances. Our correspondent Steve Evans sent this report from Seoul in South Korea.
She's become a familiar face. The North Korean newsreader says the nuclear test is to protect the country's dignity. and existence. In South Korea, they monitored the tremors. Each test has been bigger than the one before. The device detonated this time is just short of the power of the Hiroshima bomb. In South Korea, the government moved into emergency session. In Japan, Prime Minister Abe condemned the test. He says Japan will coordinate with the US and South Korea over a response. North Korea shocked the world 10 years ago. In 2006, it detonated its first device. 3 years later, a bigger one. And then an improvement in technology, a lighter device better able to fit on a missile. And this year, it claimed an even more powerful device, though outside experts doubt the claim. The United States, Russia and China have all voiced their condemnation. But their real problem is what to do now. Sanctions on North Korea are already very tight. The country is very poor. The militarized regime in Pyongyang is entrenched. It shows no sign of collapse or of renouncing nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un relishes each advance in his technology, overseeing what he claimed was a nuclear warhead small enough to go on a rocket. In recent months, North Korea has been launching missiles about every 10 days, in defiance of the United Nations. North Korea does not have nuclear-tipped missiles yet, but it's working steadily towards it. Stephen Evans, BBC News, South Korea.
Paralympics GB are second in the medals table in Rio after day one of sporting action. Britain picked up 11 medals, 5 of them gold. Dame Sarah Storey is now Para-GB's most decorated female athlete ever after winning her 12th gold medal, surpassing Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson. There was also success for athletes on the track and in the swimming pool. Well, our sports correspondent Andy Swiss is in Rio for us now. Andy.
Yes, Rita, welcome back to the Paralympic Park. As you say, the British team will be hoping to pick up where they left off yesterday. 2 gold medals in the pool and 3 gold medals in the velodrome, where it was a day of history for Dame Sarah Storey, as Patrick Geary now reports.
12 golds in 2 sports across 7 different games, a seemingly never-ending story. A swimmer turned cyclist turned icon, Dame Sarah Storey needed 1 more gold to become Britain's most successful female Paralympian. In the C5 3,000 metre pursuit final, the race is over if you catch your opponent. Her teammate Crystal Lane was the woman in front, knowing history was just over her shoulder. As Storey passed her, she passed Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, straight into the record books. As in the Olympics, Great Britain seemed peerless on the pedals. Earlier, hunting the first British gold of the Games, Megan Gillier was chasing American Jamie Watmore in the C1 race. Soon Watmore got that feeling. She's behind you. Gold to Gillier, victim of a stroke 4 years ago. This morning, she's a Paralympic champion. The man on the back of this bike, Steve Bate, came to paracycling by way of an American mountain. While becoming the first visually impaired man to climb it, he was persuaded to try out tandem cycling. He and guide Adam Duggleby were too quick for their Dutch opponents in their final, and Bate has scaled another summit. What they can do on wheels, Paralympics GB can also do on water. Ollie Hind qualified fastest for the S8 400 metre freestyle final. Soon it was a case of just how fast could he go. No one else in the frame, Hind against the clock. Hind won a new world record and his 2nd Paralympic gold. Bethany Firth set a world record on the way to the S14 100 metre backstroke final. And in that final, she went and broke it again. An unforgettable day for the Northern Irish swimmer. As it was for Daniel Diaz. Brazil's best-known para-athlete. He'd won 10 Paralympic golds before this, but none like this. These games have been surrounded by trouble, but these are the scenes they will want the world to see. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
Yes, an excellent first day for the British team, but no doubting the star of the show, Dame Sarah Storey, a 12th Paralympic title, and afterwards I asked her what it meant to beat Baroness Grey-Thompson's record.
It's incredible. I mean, it's taken me 2 sports. Tanny managed it in 1, so she's an incredibly special lady. And first person I spoke to when I came off the track was Tanny. She's right there in the mix zone. So, no, I mean, she's been a mentor and a huge inspiration to me my whole career, and continues to be. You know, if I have any sort of issues I need to ask anyone about, then generally it'll be Tanny. So, yeah, she's an amazing lady, and I just feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to get anywhere near her.
And what did Tanny say to you?
She was just really proud. Like she said, I've been crying, I'm so proud of you. But she was there my very first games when she won 4 gold medals in Barcelona. And she's always been the athlete that would look out for me. So no, I feel very, very, very lucky, and she's just, yeah, wonderful.
And to celebrate a Paralympic title for the first time with your daughter, how special was that?
Oh, I mean, she told me she'd got dodgy knees. She'd fallen over at lunchtime. That was the first thing she said. Mummy, I've got a boom. But no, having Louisa here is just the icing on the cake. It doesn't get much better than having your kids to watch you win. It's a huge balancing act when you're a mum and you've got a little tot and you're having to think about their well-being and their change of time zone and their feeding, make sure they don't get ill because you'll get ill or potentially. So there's so many logistics to think about.
And looking to the future a little bit, do you feel like you're still getting better and better?
I spend 99% of my time racing on the road, and that gives you an immense strength, and I'm racing people like Marianne Vos and Lizzie Armitstead and all the huge women's World Tour riders, Anna van der Breggen, obviously the Olympic champion, and Kristen Armstrong, road time trial Olympic champion. Race those women all the time, and that gives you a sense of, you know, getting stronger, and they're getting stronger. And obviously Kristen won at nearly 43, so yeah, I'll not be 43 in Tokyo, so you never know.
Yes, Dame Sarah Storey with a chance of winning 3 more gold medals at these games, and there could be more success in the velodrome over the next couple of hours. In the tandem event, Sophie Thornhill and Helen Scott going for gold. They're already the Commonwealth champions. And then later on, more medal hopes in the athletics. One of the stars of London 2012, Johnny Peacock, looking to retain his 100 metres title. Now, Peacock has struggled for form and fitness a little over the last couple of years, but he looked hugely impressive in yesterday's heat, setting a new Paralympic record. So he would seem to have a great chance of winning a 2nd Paralympic title, Rita.
Andy, many thanks. And you can, of course, follow all the action from the Paralympics with commentary on BBC Radio 5 Live. The BBC Sport website will have the latest throughout the Games, and you can sign up for medal alerts via the BBC Sport app. The time is 17 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. The Prime Minister has said all schools in England should be able to select pupils by ability, so long as they help poorer pupils get on. And coming up, to an asteroid and back, NASA launches an ambitious mission to collect rock samples from space.
In South today, the weekend weather forecast for you, plus channeling electricity from France to the south, but residents living near a proposed converter say there's not enough evidence it's safe. And restored to its former glory, the stately home severely damaged by fire reopens.
Now, tens of thousands of animals, including rhinos, elephants and lions, are being killed just for their heads, which are used as trophies. In a report out today, South Africa has been identified as the biggest exporter of animal heads. This week, the World Conservation Congress has called on South Africa to ban the hunting of lions bred in captivity, something known as canned lion hunting. This report by our Africa correspondent Alistair Leithhead contains images that some viewers may find distressing.
On the lookout for lions in South Africa's northernmost province. But this is not a tourist safari to photograph animals. This is a hunting reserve. They're nervous of the car.
There is a lot of controversy when it comes to the canned lion industry, or the so-called canned lion industry, and it's put a bad name on hunting in general. So we totally condemn any illegal hunting.
Canned lion hunting is when animals bred in captivity and used to humans are delivered to be killed, more like a duck shoot than a lion hunt. This disturbing video, given to the BBC, shows a group of American hunters who shot 10 lions in a week.
Loud. Shoot him again, shoot him again, shoot him again. Shoot him again!
The cameraman decided to speak out about the ethics, disturbed by what he'd filmed. The lions were brought into this small area the day before the hunt.
Right from the start, it's told to the guys, it's very dangerous. These are wild animals. It's very scary, Slaps on the back. You're such a hero. Look at what you've done. You've got your king of the jungle. Meanwhile, it's all just a lie.
Campaigners are disgusted.
I think from the outset, the notion that you breed an animal to release it into a confined area and it gets shot under these sort of conditions is appalling.
We were invited to a breeding facility to show the lions were well looked after. Their enclosures were small. Well, these lions have all been bred in captivity. There are about 35 of them in these enclosures in this farm, and their sole purpose is to be bred to be taken out onto hunting lodges and shot by hunters. Supporters say it means wild lions aren't killed and large areas are conserved. What would happen if hunting was banned in South Africa?
That'll actually be very much a negative implication for the South African economy, firstly. Hunting generates a lot of money from overseas people.
And it is big business. Hundreds of captive-bred lions are killed every year in South Africa. Alistair Leithhead, BBC News, Limpopo Province.
The Serious Fraud Office says 3 people have been charged with fraud and false accounting in relation to a black hole found in Tesco accounts in 2014. Those charged are due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later this month. Well, with me is our business correspondent Emma Simpson. Emma, what more can you tell us about what's happened?
Rita, it's been nearly 2 years since Tesco was plunged into turmoil with an accounting scandal that stunned the city. And really it centred on how Britain's biggest retailer recorded income from its suppliers, something that led to its profits being overstated by a jaw-dropping £326 million. Now, the SFO started investigating back in October 2014, and today, as you say, it's announced that 3 former Tesco executives have been charged. They are Chris Bush, the former UK Managing Director, Carl Rogberg, the former UK Finance Director, and John Schooler, the former UK Food Commercial Director. Now, they were among 8 executives suspended at the time. The 3 men have now since left the company, and they have been charged with fraud by abuse of position and 1 count of false accounting.
And has Tesco said anything about this?
Not very much, just a short statement pointing out that these issues were historic and that it continued to cooperate with the SFO's investigation, adding that the last 2 years have seen an extensive programme of change. Now, of course, this investigation has been looming over its head for such a long time. This will come as a blow to them, and of course the investigations are continuing, and Tesco could well face a multi-million-pound fine over this down the line.
OK, Emma, many thanks. Around 6 million people in the UK take statins, drugs which are used to lower cholesterol. A major review published in The Lancet has found their benefits have been repeatedly underestimated and the harms exaggerated. But critics say healthy people are being unnecessarily encouraged to take the drugs and then suffering from uncomfortable side effects. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson reports.
Heart attacks and strokes, often life-threatening emergencies, are among the UK's biggest killer. Statins are recommended to prevent them, but that sparked controversy about whether too many healthy people at low risk are being prescribed them. The review of the safety and efficacy of statins which lower cholesterol aims to clear up the debate. Researchers who examined a large amount of data concluded that taking statins over 5 years protected 10% of people at high risk of heart attacks and strokes and 5% of people at risk because of their age, blood pressure or diabetes. And side effects were low, with up to 1% of people suffering from muscle pain.
These benefits far outweigh the small harms associated with statin. And if you have a heart attack and stroke, it can be fatal. The damage can be irreversible, whereas the side effects, the muscle problem that rarely occurs, if you stop the drug, it goes away.
Statins are among the most commonly prescribed drugs in the UK. It's estimated that around 6 million people take them. But the authors of today's report say an extra 2 million people should be on them. and guidelines suggest it could be many millions more. But there's concern from a minority group of critics that healthy people are being encouraged to take pills unnecessarily, and they've strongly criticised today's report for lacking independence.
I've treated thousands of patients with heart disease in my career, and in my own experience and looking at other data and speaking to other doctors, about 1 in 5 patients at some point taking a statin will experience a side effect that interferes with the quality of life, most commonly fatigue or muscle pain.
Many family doctors have struggled to convince patients to take statins. The Royal College of GPs is among a number of major organisations backing today's report, agreeing the drugs are the best way to protect patients. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
More than 30 tourists spent the night stuck in cable cars at an altitude of about 12,000 feet in the French Alps. Officials say crossed cables were to blame. Around 65 others were rescued by helicopter before nightfall. All are now safe. Richard Lister reports.
As the light faded yesterday, frantic efforts to rescue the last tourists trapped high above the Alps. 33 people, including a 10-year-old child, were known to be inside those cabins. Getting them out was proving impossible. Rescuers could be seen suspended from the helicopter, trying to make contact with those on board. One of those involved in this delicate operation said it was like performing surgery from the sky. By nightfall, almost 80 people had been rescued, some by helicopter, others in cabins nearer the ground, were lowered on ropes to safety and brought back down the mountain.
The 2 rescuers stayed with us, and then we did a belay after we decided there was no other way to get down, and thank goodness that they were able to help us down.
In the dark and with poor weather at the summit, the rescue had to be suspended, leaving those still trapped to a long, cold night.
At the start of the operation, there were some scenes of panic, but those still up there have emergency kits in the cable cars. And we are in the summer season, so there isn't severe cold.
This morning, the rescue operation resumed. Those who'd spent the night more than 12,000 feet up had blankets and energy bars, but still no clear idea about how they'd get down. A few hours later, though, engineers managed to free the tangled cables which jammed the system and got the cars running again. And finally, the last groups of people were back on the ground, cold and tired, but apparently unharmed. For some, though, this was clearly a traumatic ordeal, a day out in the mountains that turned into a long and frightening night. Richard Lister, BBC News.
NASA launched a spacecraft overnight which will travel to an asteroid, attach itself to it, collect samples and then make its way back to us in 2023. Scientists are hoping the mission will reveal more about the way planets in the solar system are formed. Our science correspondent Palab Ghosh reports.
And liftoff of OSIRIS-REx, its 7-year mission to boldly go to the asteroid Bennu and back.
It was a perfect launch for NASA's new mission.
OSIRIS-REx has gone supersonic.
It's to grab a little chunk of an asteroid and bring it home to Earth.
And you see the solid rocket booster jettison.
And then OSIRIS-REx begins its 2-year journey to asteroid Bennu.
How about that launch? I mean, was that not awesome? I mean, the Delta or the Atlas V rocket performed impeccably.
The asteroid is in a similar orbit to the Earth, and it's essentially a piece of rubble left over from the construction of the solar system. The spacecraft will spend 2 years studying the asteroid, and then it'll make its way slowly downward. A robotic arm will then reach out and grab a little piece from the surface. Once the sample is safely stowed away, the spacecraft will make its way back to Earth. The scientists involved don't know what they'll discover, but they'll be looking for evidence of complex chemicals needed for life. These are called organic compounds.
One of the great things about exploring and about going to a really an unknown place is that you get to learn something new. So I think that we're fairly confident that we know this is going It's a carbon-rich asteroid. We're fairly confident that there's going to be some of these organic compounds there, but until we get it back down to Earth, you know, we won't have those definitive answers, and so we're looking forward to that.
The spacecraft will jettison a pod containing the sample when it returns to Earth in 2023. Scientists will then study the sample to learn more about how the Earth and the other planets in the solar system formed. Palab Ghosh, BBC News.
Firefighters are tackling at least 100 forest fires across Portugal, including in the tourist region of the Algarve. A luxury hotel and 3 small villages have been evacuated, and 50 tourists, including many British nationals, have been taken to safety. Strong winds and hot weather have made tackling the fires, which are thought to have been started by arsonists, particularly difficult. Well, let's look at the weather here. Here's Phil Avery. Phil.
Hi Rita, thanks very much. We'll make reference to that hot weather in Portugal again a wee bit later on, but that's not the issue at the moment. Even on the big scale, you get the feeling that something's going on close by to the northwestern quarter of the British Isles. Quite an active area of low pressure, throwing a frontal system with its cloud, wind and rain in towards western Scotland through Northern Ireland. Further south, it's not a bad day. There's enough about the cloud for there to be a scattering of showers. There's some sunshine in there, and we've already seen temperatures of 23, 24. Going to throw you on towards the sort of rush hour time, and that's when major concerns are, because notice the gusts of wind, 40, 50, and exposure 60 miles an hour. A lot of surface water, central part of Scotland, the A9, M8, not looking very clever, top end of the M6, the motorways of Northern Ireland too, a lot of surface water around, gusty through the Irish Sea there. But then as we come that wee bit further south, away from that weather system, as I say, there's enough about the cloud for the odd passing shower, but many of you will stay dry through the course of the afternoon, and the weather shouldn't be a problem at this stage. The gusts could touch 70 miles an hour in the far northwest of Scotland for a time. That weather system coming further south with time into the wee small hours. Ahead of it, it'll be another rather close night, but following on behind, somewhat fresher airs coming in from the Atlantic. So that's how we start off Saturday. We've got that front to contend with, and your impression of the weekend will just be dependent on where you are in relation to that front. There are no problems across the greater part of Scotland, Northern Ireland, a mixture of sunny spells and showers here, quite blustery in the far northwest. It takes a time before the cloud and rain gets away from parts of the north of England and northern Wales. And notice into the middle of the afternoon, that rain is still there across parts of East Anglia and the southeast. The temperatures, not bad for the time of year. Through the evening, the last of that rain eventually pulls away from East Anglia in the southeast, possibly too late for some of you, I know, but that's the way of it. And then we're off and running into Sunday. We've had real problems about placing that area of low pressure for Sunday's weather. Now we've got a greater sense of where it will be. Late in the day, overnight into Monday, I think we're going to have some wet and windy weather eventually pushing into the northwest of Scotland. But for the greater part of the country, for the greater part of Sunday, it's a decent sort of day. Enough cloud for the odd shower, a lot of dry weather. The breeze is coming in from the south. So again, those temperatures are above what we would expect for the time of year. And just referring back to that situation in Portugal, and a nod to our weather next week, not wall-to-wall sunshine by any means at all, but we are going to tap into some of that heat. And I expect that somewhere in the southern half of Britain come Tuesday, could be looking at 29, possibly 30 degrees. Rita.
Phil, thank you. Now, a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. The Prime Minister said all schools in England should be able to select pupils by ability, as long as they help poorer pupils get on. Well, that's all from us now on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.